It was a sleepy Tuesday afternoon in early fall, the kind of day when the sun couldn't decide whether it wanted to shine or retreat behind the clouds for good. On the porch of a modest aging house in a quiet Baton Rouge neighborhood, Laverne Holloway stood still. Her feet, wrapped in old terry cloth slippers, hadn't moved since she'd stepped out of her 2007 Saturn. In one hand, she held a reusable grocery tote containing a loaf of honey wheat bread, two cans of black beans, and a warm rotisserie chicken. In the other hand was her house key, the one she'd used for 23 years, refusing to fit in the lock. She paused, turned the key again. Jiggle, twist, nothing. Her heart thumped once, twice with growing urgency. She tried the key again. Left, right, nothing. Her eyes narrowed. Something was wrong. Then three knocks on the door. Once, nothing. Twice, still nothing. The third time the door cracked open, just a sliver, and behind it stood Candace. Candace, the girlfriend of her adopted son, Devin, blinked in confusion. Her manicured brow arched like she hadn't expected guess. "Oh, you're back early," Candace said, her voice light but not warm. Laverne offered a confused smile. "I live here." Candace's smile faltered. She stepped outside and gently pulled the door shut behind her. "Devin was supposed to talk to you." "Talk to me about what?" Candace looked away, clearly uncomfortable. "About the papers, the deed. He said you agreed to sign it over a few weeks ago." Laverne's hand tightened around the grocery tote. "Papers?" "He said it was part of your estate planning. Said it was just a formality." Laverne blinked. The memory hit her like a whisper in the back of her mind. Devin had brought over a thick stack of papers one Sunday afternoon. He'd told her it was all routine. "Just some legal stuff, so things don't get messy if something ever happens to you, Ma." He'd smiled that same grin he'd used since he was a boy, and she, loving him more than her own safety, had signed. And now she was locked out of her own home. "Why can't I get into my house?" she asked, her voice quieter now. Candace looked back toward the house as if debating whether to go inside or run. "Look, Devin said it would be best if..." "If what, baby? If you treated me like a stranger? Like some woman off the street?" Candace didn't respond. She just offered a tight, apologetic smile and said she'd go get Devin. Then the door closed again. This time Laverne heard the deadbolt turn. She stood there for 15 minutes, not a single knock back, not a word from her son, only the sound of wind whistling through dry leaves. She walked back down the stairs, the warm chicken pressed to her side like a sleeping child. She got in her car and drove 2 blocks away, parking under a dim street lamp. And there she sat through the night. The betrayal sat in her chest like a stone. But she didn't cry. Because crying wouldn't change the fact that Devin had stolen more than just the deed. He had stolen the very idea of home. To understand Laverne's pain, you have to know who she was before all this. You have to go back nearly 3 decades. Back to the corridors of the ER at St. Agnes Hospital in Baton Rouge, where Laverne Holloway worked the night shift, a nurse with hands that had delivered babies, comforted the dying, and bandaged more wounds than she could count. She never had children of her own. After 2 miscarriages and a failed round of IVF in her 30s, she'd made peace with that fact, or thought she had. Then came Devin. He was just 2 years old, brought in by CPS, barely speaking, with a swollen lip and a stained oversized t-shirt. His foster mother had dropped him off and never came back. Laverne had no plan to adopt. She wasn't trying to be a hero, but something in the way Devin clung to the hem of her scrubs that night told her God had made other plans. And so she took him home. Just for the weekend, she told herself. Just until they found someone permanent. But Monday came and went, and Tuesday. And by the end of the month, she had a new crib set up in the guest room and a meeting scheduled with a lawyer. "You sure about this?" her friend Dolores had asked. A black woman in her late 30s adopting a white boy with behavioral issues? "Girl, you sure you ready for that kind of fight?" "I've already been in the ring," Laverne said softly. "This ain't nothing new." Over the years, she gave Devin everything she could. A bedroom with race car sheets, piano lessons, swimming classes, Saturday mornings at the zoo. She worked overtime to afford tutoring when he struggled with reading. She even taught him how to braid on her action figures so he'd grow up knowing how to care for others. She raised him with grace and grit. But time did what it always does. It stretched. Devin started asking questions in middle school. Why am I different from you? Why do people stare? And she always gave him the same answer. Because the world don't always understand what love looks like. But you're mine, baby. That's what matters. But maybe it hadn't been enough. By the time Devin was in college, he rarely called. When he did come home, it was with one eye on his phone, the other on his watch. After Laverne's husband, Leonard, passed from a misdiagnosed embolism, Devin returned more frequently. At first, she thought it was grief, a chance to reconnect. She didn't know he was there to assess, to inventory. She didn't know he was preparing to betray her. But what Devin could never have predicted, what no one knew, was that Laverne had secrets of her own. When Leonard died, she sued the hospital. They said it was a natural complication. She knew better. She'd worked long enough to recognize malpractice. So she consulted an old friend, a lawyer named C.J. Vance. And 2 years later, she won. Quietly, without fuss, without press. The hospital settled. $9.5 million, and not a soul knew. Because Laverne wasn't a fool. She'd set up multiple trusts under her maiden name. The money wasn't for showing off. It was for peace. It was for security. It was for the woman who had buried a husband and raised a son that wasn't hers by blood, but hers in every way that mattered. So when she stood outside her own locked home, with a chicken going cold and a heart cracking down the middle, she didn't scream. She got strategic. Laverne didn't return to the house that night. She didn't even drive past it. Instead, she checked into a small roadside motel in Meridian under the name L. King, her maiden name. The receptionist didn't ask questions, and she didn't offer any. The room was barely larger than her old laundry closet, and the bed creaked like it was remembering every person who had ever slept in it. But it was hers, and it was quiet. She spent the first night just sitting, not crying, not raging, just thinking. She held her Bible in her lap but didn't open it. She kept the rotisserie chicken in the mini fridge, even though she had no appetite. What she did do, just past midnight, was pull a worn brown notebook from her purse. On the first page, written in her careful nurse's handwriting, was a sentence she had copied down years ago. Let the storm do what it must. I have built my house on bedrock. Page after page, she had written memories, prayers, names, and questions. She flipped through until she reached the back, where she had taped a copy of the malpractice settlement check. It wasn't the amount she stared at. It was the date Devin didn't call, the date Candace posted a photo of them on a beach vacation, the date she spent alone with a microwave dinner and a bouquet of gas station flowers she bought for herself. She picked up her phone and scrolled through her contacts. Then she dialed. 6 rings, then a groggy voice. This better be Jesus or coffee. Laverne chuckled softly. CJ, it's me. Evie, he asked, instantly alert. You okay? Number. But I will be. She didn't have to explain. Real friends, real old ones, know when the pain is deeper than you want to say out loud. He agreed to meet her the next morning at a little diner just off the interstate, the kind of place where the waitresses call you sugar and the biscuits come with real butter. When CJ slid into the booth across from her, his gray beard looked a little longer, his eyes a little softer, but his mind was still sharp as ever. He listened to every word. How Devin had tricked her into signing the house over. How he'd changed the locks. How Candace acted like it was all just paperwork. CJ didn't interrupt once, except to refill her coffee. When she was done, he leaned back and nodded. He played you, but he made one big mistake. What's that? Laverne asked, her fingers curled tightly around her mug. He forgot who taught him how to read. CJ spent the next 2 hours laying out her options. The deed transfer could be challenged. If they could prove she didn't understand what she was signing, or that she was misled, it was actionable. He explained about undue influence, capacity to consent, and how judges see family betrayal, especially when it smells like greed. You got the notebook, right? He asked. Laverne nodded. Then we've got evidence. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. CJ, I don't want to destroy him. CJ tilted his head. You want your house back? Yes. Then we ain't destroying. We're rebuilding. With his bricks if we have to. That night she called the trust lawyer who helped set up her settlement. A soft-spoken woman named Greta who had never asked questions, only followed instructions. Laverne told her to prepare, quietly. No alerts to the bank, no calls to Devon. Not yet, because Laverne had decided something. She didn't just want her home, she wanted her dignity restored. A week later, a formal petition was filed. The legal gears began to turn. And Devon, he was still strutting around the house like a peacock, bragging to his friends about his property. He never knew the court date was coming. He never knew the hearing had been set. He never expected the judge to rule in favor of a mother scorned. Devon didn't even show up. Candace had moved back to Dallas without him. Maybe she saw the writing on the wall. Or maybe she'd just gotten what she wanted and left. Either way, 3 months later, the house belonged to Laverne again. And she didn't hesitate. She sold it the next week. What came after shocked even CJ. Laverne didn't buy a new condo. Didn't move to Florida like he half-joked she would. Instead, she bought 3 modest homes in Pascagoula, Mississippi. Not for her, for other women, older women, black women, women like her, who had given their lives to their families and gotten betrayal in return. Women who'd been kicked out of their daughters' houses. Grandmothers used for babysitting and then discarded. Widows forgotten by their kin. She named it Len's Place, after her husband. Not a shelter, she told the local paper. A sanctuary. She hosted Sunday dinners, led prayer circles, and even planted rose bushes along the fences. And when someone asked why she did it, why she didn't keep the money and live in luxury, she gave a quiet smile. Because I know what it's like to be thrown away, and I know what it's like to rise again. Then came the letter. No return address, just her name on the envelope, in a shaky, familiar hand. Inside, a single page. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I thought I deserved more. Maybe I didn't realize what you gave up for me. I'm sorry, I don't expect forgiveness. But I needed to say it. Devon Laverne read it once, then twice. Then she folded it and tucked it into the back of her Bible. She didn't reply. Some forgiveness isn't for them. It's for you. Because now she knew. What every mother must come to understand in her own time. You can raise a child right. Give them your all, and still lose them. Not because you failed, but because they chose wrong. And that is not your shame to carry. There's something sacred about early mornings in a quiet southern town. The air carries a stillness, like the world's holding its breath before the day begins. Laverne sat on the wraparound porch of one of her new homes in Pascagoula, Mississippi. She wore a thick cardigan and held a chipped ceramic mug filled with chicory coffee. From her seat, she could see the rose bushes blooming, a stubborn blush of color and soil that had known its share of sorrow. Inside, the sounds of life stirred. Miss Alma hummed as she folded laundry in the front room. Darlene was frying sweet potatoes in the kitchen, her laughter occasionally bubbling up from whatever TV show she was watching. 2 new residents had moved in just this week, women who carried stories that broke your heart quietly, like the slow cracking of ice across a lake. And Laverne, she had found peace. Not perfection, not a Hollywood ending, but peace. She had taken the millions she never bragged about and turned them into something that mattered, not just for herself, but for women like her. But peace didn't mean the fire inside her had gone out. Number the fire had simply learned to burn quietly. 3 months after the letter, CJ stopped by most Fridays now. He always brought banana pudding from Mabel's diner and a stack of mail he insisted on reading to her aloud, as if she needed his dramatics to spice up the mundane. Bill, junk, political flyer. Oop, this one's handwritten. Smells like guilt, he teased. Laverne raised an eyebrow but said nothing. He opened it. Inside was a formal invitation. Devon was getting married. The date was set for June. Venue, a vineyard in Georgia. The envelope also contained a note. I'd like to see you. If you want to come, you're welcome. If not, I understand. CJ stared at it a moment longer than usual. Then he handed it to Laverne without a word. She didn't flinch, didn't smile. She just folded the paper in half and slid it into the middle of her Bible. Not the back this time, not to be hidden, just placed there, right beside Psalms. CJ didn't say what was on his mind. He didn't have to. They both knew. Wedding day Laverne didn't go, but she sent a gift. Not cash, not jewelry, but a leather-bound photo album, carefully curated and wrapped in navy blue satin. Inside were pictures Devon had probably forgotten. His first swim class. The Christmas when they couldn't afford a tree, so they painted one on the wall. The time she slept in a hospital chair for 3 nights when he had pneumonia. The final page held a note. You once told me you didn't know what love looked like. I hope this helps you remember. Love isn't in what you take, it's in what you give. Mom. No signature, no return address. She didn't need him to respond, but he did. A visit she didn't expect. It was a Tuesday. Rain tapped gently on the window panes. Laverne was in the middle of pruning the herb garden when she heard a car pull up. She wiped her hands on her apron and peered around the hedges. Devon stood by a rental car, suit jacket in hand, no ring on his finger. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. He looked thinner, or maybe just smaller, like he'd finally shrunk to the size of the boy she used to hold at 2 a.m. when nightmares chased him from sleep. May I come in? He asked. She nodded without a word. They didn't sit in the living room. She led him to the backyard under the trellis where the climbing roses had begun to take hold. The same spot where she hosted tea every Sunday with the women who now called her place home. Why are you here? She asked plainly. Devon swallowed hard. Because I've been wrong for a very long time. Silence. About you. About everything. Candace left. She said I was chasing money and losing soul. I told her she was being dramatic. Turns out she was being right. Laverne said nothing. She just looked at him. Really looked. Every time I tried to be more, I thought I had to erase where I came from. I thought, if I built something without you, it would finally mean I made it. She looked down at the pruning shear still in her hand. And what do you think now? He exhaled. Now I know I didn't build anything. I stole. From you. From the very woman who gave me every brick I ever used. More silence. Finally she looked up. Her voice was gentle, but not soft. I don't hate you, Devon. He looked surprised. I'm disappointed. I'm hurt. But I don't hate you, because hate would have turned me into you. And I chose something else. Tears rimmed his eyes. Do you forgive me? She didn't answer right away. Then slowly she said, forgiveness isn't just a door you walk through. It's a room you have to live in. Earn. Respect. He nodded. Then let me start, however long it takes. 1 year later, Laverne never moved back into her old house. She didn't need to. Devon never reclaimed it either. He sold everything. Downsized. Got a job teaching GED classes at a local community center. It was his idea to name one of the outreach programs after her, the L. Holloway Second Chance Fund. CJ chuckled when he saw the flyer. He's trying, he said. Laverne smiled. Let's see if he can keep it up. She visited once, sat in the back of the classroom, and watched Devon coach a 43-year-old single father through fractions. He didn't know she was there, but she saw something. Humility. Real, unpolished, painful humility. It wasn't a full circle, but it was a start. Final scene. A quiet Sunday evening. The porch was full. Alma was knitting, Darlene humming a hymn, and a new resident was telling a story about her grandbaby. Laverne sat with her tea and looked around. Not a single mansion in sight, no luxury cars, no marble floors. But there was love, not loud, not performative, but steady, strong, enough. CJ arrived late with a newspaper tucked under his arm. He handed her the business section. There was an article circled in red ink. Son donates inheritance to support elder women, displaced by family betrayal. The name under the byline, Devon Holloway. She read it once, smiled, then turned the page to the crossword. I thought you'd say something, CJ teased. Laverne shrugged. When a tree grows back after lightning, it doesn't scream. It just grows. A mother's love is not measured by what she gives, but what she builds in silence. And sometimes the greatest revenge is simply becoming whole again. So if you've ever been discarded, forgotten, or betrayed, Don't look back to scream. Look forward to rise.